Hello, hello. I'm starting promptly at 6 because I don't think anybody has time to spare. So thank you for joining me. And if you're watching this recorded, thank you for watching it. My goal is to always give you something to think about because teaching you what to do is very different than teaching you how to do something. Um, and so I'm going to try and knock both of those out, the what and the how, in the next 15 minutes. My goal also is for you to be able to listen to this anywhere because I am a podcast girl by nature. So I like to listen to things as I walk. And, I'm always going to encourage you to get those extra steps in. So don't feel like you have to sit here and watch my face. You can seriously take this on the road with you, in the car, on a walk, at the gym, whatever. So let's cut to the chase. How much and what to eat. Now, if you know me at all, and some of you do, some of you don't, you know that the answer to how much and what to eat is not as simple as me telling you, eat these many calories, eat this much protein, eat these many carbs, right? Because if it was that simple, we'd all be walking around super comfortable in our bodies, having the energy to do everything we want to do, looking how we want to look, and all the things, right? So I know anybody that's in my world already knows that it's more complicated than that. That being said, I don't like false advertising. So if you are here just for me to help you figure out how many calories to eat, how much protein to eat, how many vegetables to eat, and you want to hop off now and send me an email, I'll be happy to walk you through that. But again, me telling you how much to eat is like 1% of the battle. The magic comes when we start to realize why it's so complicated to consistently eat the things, drink the things that are going to make us feel really good, that are going to make us have energy, that are going to make us hit a goal if it means maintaining our weight, if it means losing weight, if it means getting stronger or faster. And if we're only looking at numbers, you're going to fail over and over again because it's so much bigger than that. And I think you know that, otherwise you wouldn't have tuned in. Again, if you tuned in just to get numbers, hop off. I'll send you a calculator for real. I don't want to waste your time. But if you're here to get more to the root of why food seems to bring you anxiety or make you feel a little chaotic or feel like you're walking through a forest with a blindfold on at times, then you're in the right place because we can start uncovering that. So I have some notes. Don't mind me. I just want to make sure I don't forget anything. I want you right now to think about when I say, how do you decide what to eat? Or what do you eat in a day? How does that make you feel? Like, take a few seconds. How does it make you feel if I or somebody else asks you, what do you eat in a day? How does that make you feel? Does it make you happy? Do you love talking about food? Does it make you excited? Does it make you anxious? Does it make you feel attacked? Does it make you feel overwhelmed? Does it make you feel out of control? I want you to think about that for a few seconds. I'm going to pause. So most people that I encounter, myself included, are a combination of all those things. And if you're not, if you're like, food is just totally neutral to me, that's wonderful. Because eventually that's sort of the promised land. For food not to bring up a whole bag of emotions, but for food to just be part of how we fuel ourselves, or maybe part of something that is celebratory or cultural, but not to have a moral value attached to it, not to make us feel bad or anxious or like we need to hide what we're eating or that we need to restrict what we're eating. So again, most people think of food as fuel and energy or as some sort of comfort some sort of satiety, or both. And it's when we can marry the two that we begin to feel that weight of that anxiety, that chaos, that overwhelm around food melt away. So how do we get there, right? We are surrounded by media, Instagram, Facebook, articles, blogs, TV commercials, radio commercials. You can't escape hearing somebody's opinion about what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating. And for most of us, it goes way, 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 way back to when we were children, to the house we were raised in. Maybe there wasn't enough food. Maybe your mom was always on a diet. Maybe your grandma told you were fat, right? So this is layered. So if you are finding that you are 35 years old or you're 40 years old and you can't really get to the root of sorting out how you feel around food, it makes a lot of sense. Because this has been layers on layers and layers, years and years and years building up to that. And then we come into the decades of information overload. So not only is it emotional now, but it's overwhelming and you just don't know where to start. And again, if I told you eat this much, eat these foods, we all know that doesn't solve the problem because it's so much deeper than that. So where do we find the magic? How do we escape this? Well, for one, we try to detach the good and the bad. Those terms, literally detaching them from food. Because if we're going to go down a philosophical route that I love to discuss, nothing is good or bad in and of itself, right? Cake is not bad in and of itself. Carrots are not good in and of themselves. They are good or bad relative to the rest of what you are eating. They are good or bad relative to what your goal is. So when we hear blanket statements like gluten's bad, carbs are bad, fat is bad, wheat is bad relative to what? And that might sound like not a very big deal, but it's actually a huge deal. Because most of the time when you're in the cycle of yo-yo dieting or restrict, binge, that's a direct result of you categorizing food as good or bad, whether or not you're conscious of it or subconscious. So when you begin to be conscious of it and to be aware that food doesn't carry a good or bad on its own, you begin to be able to put pieces of the puzzle together for something that's very individual to you, very individual to your goals, whatever they might be. But until you work on that detachment, you're going to maintain a cycle of binge restrict or being really, really good, being on track for a month and then falling off. It's inevitable. It's literally the oldest story. Like, I'm not religious, but in the book, right? The Garden of Evil. Don't eat that apple. So what do we want to do? We want to eat that apple. And we can only hold away, only stave off temptation for so long. So the longer you tell yourself these foods are bad, how long until you fold? Or on the flip side, these are all really good foods, so I'm only going to eat these foods. But that gets really tiring. And then you're put into a situation where you're at a party or at a wedding or you're traveling and you don't want to stick to that anymore. So you veer off. And then what happens when we veer off? We implode, right? So it really does begin with ironing out this relationship with how you see food and truly understanding that nothing is good or bad unless we have a bigger picture relative to what. So the next time you're sitting there like feeling anxiety around a meal, or you're at a friend's house and they serve you something and you're like, I can't have it, that's bad. Ask yourself why you think that's bad. Because we all know, we're all smart enough to know that a plate of pasta is not bad on its own, right? And that we know that if we only ate vegetables all day, every day, That's not good on its own either. So good or bad relative to what? And when you start seeing things in the realm of a bigger picture, you're going to feel that weight, that anxiety, that chaos when it comes to thinking about food start to fade away, because we begin to be directed by our logic, not our emotion. The caveat: food should be enjoyable. Food should be able to be part of a celebration if you want. Food is highly cultural. Whether or not you want it to be, maybe you think that's silly, but for most of us it is. How many times you make plans with your girlfriends or with your parents or your cousin, and it revolves around food? Or you have a birthday party, invite people over, it revolves around food. And that's okay. Food can be used as a means of celebration or culture, or just something that is comforting. Sometimes people say, I'm just stress eating, and you stress eat because you're filling a void. You're trying to comfort yourself. Food is comforting. So the question becomes, how often are we allowing that to be the reason for which we're eating versus eating for fuel, eating for function? And we live in this world where everybody feels like they need to be in camp A or camp B, right? It's like everywhere. And it's the people that figure out how to marry those both that find a lot of freedom around food and that hit their goals exponentially quicker, whatever the goal might be. But it takes you finding pause throughout the day, throughout a meal, throughout a snack. Think, am I eating this for function and for fuel? Or is this one of those chances where I'm just eating to enjoy? I'm eating for comfort. I'm eating for satiety. I'm eating to be part of a celebration. But without taking pause, without going through those steps, you live in the land of chaos. And it's all just jargled. And that's when food and us have tension. And that tension is not a fun place to live. Something that I talked about a few months ago on Instagram, if you follow me there, was how in this day and age, everybody's equated or seems to have equated nutrition with diet. And so when we talk about nutrition, a lot of people that are like, I don't want to diet, I don't want to talk about dieting, I don't want to lose weight, turn off their brain. And I get it. It can be really exhausting to talk about dieting and restriction. But the fact of the matter is, nutrition is really, really important to all of us, especially as we age. A really good example is I'm 42 and I am training for a Chicago Marathon. The last time I ran it, I was 32. And I didn't do anything to hone in on my nutrition. Nothing. I just ran. And I ran a pretty okay race for 21 miles, and then it completely bombed. And that was 100% nutrition related. And I am going into this marathon season probably more focused on nutrition than on the actual miles. Like, I'm following a running plan, but I know that that nutrition is what's going to propel me to have a really good race. And it doesn't just come down to endurance sports. It comes down to daily living. So if you're somebody that wakes up every morning feeling sluggish, or you wake up feeling okay, and then by like 10 a.m., 3 p.m., whatever, you feel like crap, 99% of the time, that's your nutrition speaking. In 99% of the time, it's because you're not getting enough of the things that your body needs to thrive. And a lot of people are like, I'm fine. But there's a difference between thriving and surviving. If you look at like the federal guidelines for protein, it's like super low, like scary low, because that's enough to survive, but not to thrive. So there's a difference. And so I really want you to start changing the way that you think about nutrition. Is not always being about dieting, losing weight, even if losing weight is part of what you want to do. But when you start to remove that language from your vocabulary and look at nutrition as, how can I nourish my body? How can I take better care of my body? How can I go from literally surviving to thriving? Your whole world is going to look different. in a really wonderful way. Because if we take away the language of diet and restriction and focus on how can I feel better? How can I take care of my organs, like literally the vessel I'm living in? We stop trying to cheat the system, right? So anyone that's ever done Weight Watchers or anything like that knows it's all about how to cheat the system and get more 0 points and more 0 point foods and whatever. And yeah, you can lose weight, but how are you going to feel at the end of the day? So I want you to challenge yourself the next time you go eat, go to the grocery store, go to a party, to start using logic to make your decisions rather than emotion. Is to start thinking about, why do I look at food as good or bad? Why do I look at carbs as bad, or gluten as bad, or dairy as bad? It's one thing if it really makes you sick. But if it's just because of all the noise that you've been hearing in the diet industry, I want you to think, what is it bad relative to? How bad could one meal be if for the rest of the day, I'm eating the things that my body really needs and my body really wants? And on the flip side, if people come to me all the time and say, I eat really healthy and I can't lose weight. Well, if you're only eating 1 or 2 food groups and not the rest, you're not actually eating really healthy, because you're not giving your body what it really needs to thrive. At the end of the day, if we're not eating enough, that's when you start to see your metabolism downregulate. Metabolic adaptation. So many women come to me, my metabolism's so slow. Yeah, because you've barely been feeding your body. And your body's literal purpose is to survive. So if we're not feeding it, it's going to do everything it can to protect you, to keep you alive, which means slowing down all of your functions. So eating less is not always the answer, especially if you're eating like 1,200 calories and you feel like crap. That's your body telling you you are not eating enough. If you are hungry all the time, if you're hangry all the time, if you don't have energy for your job, for your kids, for your family, for your partner, for your friends, that is literally your body telling you, you are not giving me enough. Listen to your body. So on top of going through that logic of good, bad, fuel, food, entertainment, and marrying all of them, where do you go from there? How do you even start? Again, you probably are like, I thought you were just going to tell me how many grams of protein to eat. And again, I can and I will. Like literally right now, you could go and Google like TDEE calculator, figure out a baseline of your calories depending on what your goal is. Stay there for a couple weeks. If you're trying to lose weight and you're not, drop your calories. If you're trying to maintain your weight and you're not, might need to increase. Like it's literally that logical. Protein, 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound. 3 to 5 servings of vegetables, 10 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories a day, half your body weight of water in ounces. So like you hear those things over and over and over again, right? But if that's all it took, you probably wouldn't be here with me right now, to be brutally honest, because it takes so much more than that. It takes a reframe of how we see food, how we see the world, really, and the role we let food play in our lives. You can go in to a meal literally feeling like you're at war with food. Anyone ever feel like that? Right? Like it's hostile, like I'm so anxious around this meal. Or you can go in saying, I already know that I'm using this food for fuel, or I'm not. I'm just using this because it's part of the party. Or I'm using it as both. So I'm going to make sure I get some protein in. I'm going to make sure I get some vegetables in, but I'm going to go eat my dessert and not feel bad about it. But until you begin to put those pieces together, if you feel like you're in this revolving door of yo-yo dieting, crash dieting, guilt and shame around food, that is not going to end until you start to work on how you actually see food. So like when we began, I asked you, think about, how does it make you feel when someone says like, what do you eat in a day? Because when I ask somebody that, like if I'm getting on a call with a potential client, say, what do you eat in a day? There's always a long pause. because they're cycling through in their head, I don't want to really tell her what I eat. 1, I think she might judge me. 2, I might judge myself. Or 3, I have no idea what I eat because I don't pay attention. And so there's inherently some form of like shame around talking about what we eat, even if you're really healthy. So until you start to mend that, it's going to be impossible to implement any of the sort of quote unquote healthy eating habits that you're going to hear people preach over and over and over again. You can do them simultaneously, but if you're trying to do one without the other, you're going to end up back to where you've always been. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully it made you feel like there's hope if you feel like you're stuck in this vicious cycle, because there really is. And it just takes you being a little intentional, a little bit logical, and putting the brakes on. And it takes a whole lot of believing in yourself that you can actually change your mindset, because you 100% can. But a lot of us fall into these patterns of self-sabotage. If I don't do it perfectly once, there's no point. And the results are going to come from consistent day after day after day effort. And taking that pause and using that logic, not just that emotion, to guide you. That's all I got. I said I'd keep it short. So if you have questions or comments or brain dumps and you want to send them my way, DM me, email me, text me. And then on Wednesday, webinar number 2, all about how to overcome the all or nothing mentality when it comes to nutrition, fitness, work, relationships, you name it. I think this is one of the biggest struggles most people encounter on a daily basis towards gaining progress in anything in their lives. When it doesn't go right, what happens? And how do we stop that cycle? So thank you so much for being here. It was a joy, and I hope you took something out of it.